because it can be, a bit of that missing link in your fat loss, your hormone balance, your stress resiliency.
So when methylation isn't working optimally, it's not just one thing that we can see is affected. It's kind of everything. It's like this whole body function.
This not only causes fat storage, but also cellular aging. Supporting methylation properly can make such a visible difference in your body composition. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast, where we help you understand this new body of yours. Maybe you've started to experience some hormonal symptoms, maybe you are post-menopause, but we know now that your body is inherently different, and those old fat loss strategies just really aren't cutting anymore. So it is time to learn how to work with this new body instead of against it, so you can open up those fat burning pathways, get your energy back, and feel confident again. So today I have the wonderful Coach Kariana here on the podcast with me, and we are talking about something that actually pops up a lot, and you've probably seen it on the internet and on TikTok and all the things. And we are talking about methylation and MTHFR today, because it can be, a bit of that missing link in your fat loss, your hormone balance, your stress resiliency, because we know, that you could be doing everything right. You're eating well, you're getting that protein in, you are working out, you are doing the things to manage your stress, but your body just isn't responding. Super frustrating. And maybe your hormones might feel off, maybe your energy feels flat, right? And just feels like your body isn't really doing the things it's supposed to be doing. And, maybe your metabolism just feels stuck. Your body is not good at taking food and turning it into fuel. It's just shuttling it into fat instead. And so there's this hidden process in your body that can kind of explain part of this, and it's called methylation. And it might sound technical, but methylation is actually one of the most fundamental things that our body does in order to stay balanced, in order to stay healthy, and it affects how your body burns fat, how it clears out hormones, how you manage your stress, and how you feel, like mentally and emotionally as well. And when methylation is working well, your metabolism hums along. Your hormones stay in great sync. Your energy feels stable, but when it's not, everything from fat loss to mood to recovery just feels like this struggle and uphill battle that, quite frankly, we're all sick of. And so today we are unpacking what it really is, what it can throw off, how you can support it naturally, especially as women, when we're navigating stress and hormones and metabolism and just everything that life throws at us. And so, Kariana, why don't you take it away with what methylation is? And we're going to try to keep it sciencey and break it down and simplify things for you guys as well. This might be a little bit of a longer episode as well, just to give you a heads up, because we do want to make sure that we cover everything for you, because MTHFR and methylation, it's not a small topic, but it's a very common one that we hear about a lot.
Yeah, very common. And if anyone sees that I'm on this podcast and they've listened to any podcast episodes with me in it before, you probably already know, let's sit down for an hour, just make sure that we're settled, because we have a lot to talk about today.
Grab a snack.
So first thing, what is actual methylation? So we hear about methylation sometimes. Maybe some people know that they have like a methylation issue, but has anyone ever told you what methylation actually is? And so at its core, methylation is a biochemical process that happens in every cell of your body millions of times per second. So obviously very important, but it's basically the act of adding a small chemical group called a methyl group to other molecules. And I know that doesn't really sound super significant, but it has a massive impact because, again, it happens in every single cell of our body, and it's a necessary process to help with things like detoxification. So adding these methyl groups, or we call methyl donors, to certain cells can help your liver process things like estrogen, environmental toxins, other hormones, and even stress hormones. It also plays a role in neurotransmitter production, so it helps us make serotonin, our dopamine, all those feel-good hormones, and even norepinephrine, which is actually part of the stress process. So mood and motivation actually can rely on these methyl donors and methylation. It can also be very important for hormone metabolism, so estrogen clearance, estrogen balance, even progesterone production and clearance, testosterone production and clearance, all of the things that we need to feel good and function regularly and from a hormone perspective. It's also very, very important to donate methyl groups for DNA repair and gene expression. So it literally can influence how your genes turn on or off. And we've briefly talked about this before, Steph, where environment can actually turn genes on or off, but then also internal environment can also turn genes on and off in terms of how your body functions and works, right? And then one of the most important things that it does from like a methylation or like a body perspective is these methyl groups and methyl donors, and this process of methylation can actually greatly influence our energy and our fat metabolism. So this includes even things like creatine production, which is involved in strength and energy and brain health. It can support cellular energy, which is like our baseline metabolism. Steph, you talk a lot about mitochondrial health. Methylation is actually a really key part of mitochondrial health. And even things like muscle recovery, which is so important when we're trying to retain muscle and build a bunch of muscle, right? So when methylation isn't working optimally, it's not just one thing that we can see is affected. It's kind of everything. It's like this whole body function where when we're not methylating things properly or donating those methyl groups properly to other molecules, then we're not seeing some of these really basic and important processes happen in the body.
Well, and then to touch on creatine as well, like women, once we hit perimenopause, that can be as early as your late 30s. You see this all the time. Your body actually produces 20% less creatine, which is wild. And so our creatine needs are higher as we age. But also, if you're someone who struggles with methylation, then that need becomes even higher. And so this is why I love encouraging women to take creatine. I'm actually recording a podcast tomorrow, which will come out the day after this one. So
amazing.
Go in. And I didn't even talk to Carrie Ann about this
Great
part.
timing.
So, no, God's work. He's just connecting our minds. Okay, so now we're going to talk about specifically how methylation is going to tie into fat burning and fat storage. So when we talk about metabolism and we talk about fat loss, you have heard me talk about the two key pathways, AMPK and mTOR. We call this your fat burning pathway and your growth and storage pathway. And so when we are in this fat burning pathway, it's when your body's able to like sense energy more. When it's turned on, it tells your body, hey, we need to burn fat and make energy. It increases something called fat oxidation. It improves your insulin sensitivity. It promotes mitochondrial function. So your body is good at taking food and turning it into fuel. So you're less likely to store it as fat and basically shifts you into that fat burning state. We love when we can get in here, right? This is a very important one. It also allows us to clean up dead cells, to lower inflammation, to decrease our risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, stroke risk, high blood pressure, all those things. It decreases chronic disease risk, which is awesome. So we want to be able to flip into this, which a lot of us don't feel like we can, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Then we have our growth and storage pathway, and it's activated by things like protein, insulin, resistance training. It promotes muscle growth and recovery. So it's not a bad thing. We want to be able to flip between the two. That's when people say like you need to be metabolically flexible. Your body needs to be able to build and it needs to be able to burn. However, many of us are stuck in this chronically activated growth and storage pathway because of all the crazy past dieting we've done, the high stress, the low carb, the go, sacrificing sleep, deadlines, people you don't like at work, saying yes to everything, not having boundaries, just life. And so what happens when we're stuck in this state and we can't flip it off and go into that fat burning state, what happens is we see more insulin resistance. We see more chronic stress. We see more inflammation, and our body gets told we have enough, let's store, even though you're eating less and you're eating clean and you're moving more and you're doing everything right, but nothing is moving. It's because your body is constantly being told we have enough, let's store. And this not only causes fat storage, but also cellular aging. And so this is where we see rapid breakdown of DNA. Things get replicated that shouldn't. And it can actually increase your risk of certain cancers, cardiovascular disease, like I mentioned, diabetes, all of these chronic conditions that, not necessarily we used to have that much of before. And so now that we understand this, where does methylation fit into this? Because that's the topic that we're covering today, right? Well, methylation is what helps keep the enzymes and the cofactors of both of these pathways functioning optimally. So it's going to make fat burning more effective, and then, like building, recovery, building muscle more effective. When it isn't, we're going to struggle with both of those things, and then we just get fatter, which sucks.
And we don't feel as good. So when methylation is sluggish, or methylation maybe isn't working as well as we want it to, several things can actually happen. And the first one would be reducing that fat burning activation. So that fat burning pathway can get closed off. And that's typically because methylation, first of all, supports mitochondrial energy production and what we call carnitine synthesis, which is just a process where an amino acid can help shuttle fat into mitochondria to be burned. So basically that fat burning potential, methylation will support that. So when that is sluggish, our fat burning potential is going to be sluggish, and that could potentially close our fat burning pathway. When methylation is also impaired or sluggish, the body will struggle to efficiently generate what we call ATP. If you remember any high school biology, that's all the energy. The ATP is the energy that our body actually uses, right? And so when we don't have as much energy, we can almost think of it like that cellular level of like our thyroid function, where it's like that thermostat. That's the energy that we have to use. If we don't have energy for ourselves to use, this will close off those fat burning pathways immediately because we just don't have the energy to burn any fat, right? And then slow methylation can also tend to coincide with what we call elevated homocysteine. This is something that it is an immune response and like almost an allergic reactions for a lot of people. We see this a lot in the transition to menopause. We do have homocysteine levels that can get really high. Oxidative stress can get really high, or neurological stress can also get really high as well. So we can see those markers in like what we do with our Dutch testing. And inflammation can also get really high when our methylation is sluggish because it's so involved in detoxification and reducing that oxidative stress. So all of that is also going to contribute to closing that fat burning pathway, which we don't want.
Yeah, so like methylation slows down the transfer of fat to your mitochondria to get burned, which obviously makes it harder to lose fat. Your body struggles to build energy, so you're going to be exhausted. When you're exhausted, very hard to want to go do things, right? We also know with that increased oxidative stress and inflammation, that directly blocks your fat burning pathway. And so you can see how there's this trickle down effect, and why we're always asking why with clients, which gets super annoying. And we're always like digging deeper into labs and asking more questions, but this is why. We need to understand, why is this happening so that we can do things to help support you. So when methylation is sluggish, not only is it going to reduce your fat burning activation, but it also overactivates our storage pathway in the wrong context. Chronic stress, nutrient overload. So if we're, chugging around lots of refined carbs from, croissants, and we're having lots of chips and chocolate bars and candies. I mean, it's Halloween time right now. So, every grocery store you walk into has all the Sour Patch Kids and the little Cadbury bars. And, we never have just one, let's be honest. We know inflammation, all those things are going to drive us into that storage pathway and keep it on, which encourages fat storage, impairing that cellular cleanup, so we see more inflammation. Methylation is required for proper insulin signaling and your estrogen metabolism. When those go off, we can see that growth and storage pathway gets triggered excessively, even without adequate energy balance. So even if we are under eating, even if we are dieting, cutting our calories, we can see that our insulin signaling is off. We can see that we become more estrogen dominant, which also is going to impact our blood sugars as well, and really keeps us stuck into that growth and storage pathway as well.
And we even see some downstream hormonal and metabolic ripple effects, of course, as well, right? So poor methylation can reduce cortisol clearance, so we can't clear out our stress hormone as well. We see this a lot, unfortunately, in our Dutch test as well, because we can look at that metabolization and the clearance rate of cortisol. It can also affect estrogen detoxification, which is our methylation rates for estrogen. It's actually called estrogen methylation on the Dutch test. We can look at things like that, and we can see, what are your methylation rates from an estrogen perspective? Are we we clearing estrogen out? And, cortisol and estrogen are both really important on top of other hormones to push your body towards either fat storage or fat burning or muscle breakdown or muscle gain, right? And so we want to make sure that our methylation activity is as efficient as possible to ensure that we have, nice clean systems almost, because methylation kind of works as like almost a cleaning system where we want everything to be nice and balanced. And because these pathways are so highly responsive to things like stress, and remember, stress happens on a cellular level too, not just a psychological or a mental or a physical level. In the cell and every cell of your body, they can also experience stress. So anything that can actually increase our internal stress, like this impaired detoxification or like inflammation, it can actually just shift the body out of fat burning state and into that, the fat storing state and that protect ourselves kind of mode that we don't want to be in very easily, regardless of you doing maybe all of the right things on the outside, from a very basic and foundational sense.
Yeah, and this is something that we talk about with people all the time. We do the stress assessments, we do the Dutch testing. They're like, but I don't feel stressed. It doesn't matter. You don't have to perceive it for your body to experience it. We are very, very good at ignoring what our body is trying to tell us. We've been doing it for decades, right? I'm fine. And no, you're not. You're not. And so this is where having the testing and assessments is super helpful, because then it's like, okay, this actually is an issue. I can't pretend anymore. It also makes it easier to have some grace for your body as well and realize, I've been putting it through a lot. I've been through a lot. And being okay with that phase of recovery and addressing things the right way so that you can get your body functioning again. And so when we look at methylation and metabolism, there's obviously a link, and we're going to just simplify it here for you. So think of methylation as this biochemical electricity. It powers both fat burning and fat storing on and off switches. And when it's working smoothly, we can easily turn on that fat burning pathway. You burn fat, your insulin works more effectively, your mitochondria thrive, you have energy. Amazing. Then we have that growth and storage pathway. And when it turns on strategically, when things are working well, you build lean muscle when you're supposed to. You don't store fat all day. When our methylation is sluggish or it's not working well, fat burning can't fully turn on, so you feel very stuck. And fat storing stays switched on, so your body stores everything. It's told, we have enough, let's store, even though you're cutting calories and cutting carbs and doing all the things. And that's why supporting methylation properly can make such a visible difference in your body composition, your energy, your recovering. And we're going to talk about what you can do to support methylation in just a few minutes here. But it's very important to understand what affects methylation first, because we need to address that and then also do the things to help support it. Because if you're trying to do things to support it, but counteracting it with things that affect it negatively, you're just going to have this equal balance where nothing really changes.
Yeah. So the first thing we want to do is let's talk about some of the 4 main categories. This doesn't mean this is all of them, but for the sake of time, we're going to talk about 4 main categories that we see the most that influence how well you may methylate. The first one is definitely genetics. And this can be one of the biggest ones that we see. We are going to talk about this a little bit later on, very briefly, but some people carry variations of their genes. These used to be considered mutations. They're now considered polymorphisms, which means they're pretty common, unfortunately, in society, which means there's not really a mutation anymore. They're just part of us. They're called SNPs or SNPs, and they are just differences in genes. So specific genes, and you may have heard of this, MTHFR. There are also other genes called MTR, MTRR, or another really common one would be a COMT gene that can slow the methylation cycle. And this doesn't mean that your body is broken. So if you have an MTHFR polymorphism or SNP, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't mean that your system is not shut down or broken. It just means that your system might need a little bit more nutritional or lifestyle support to kind of keep things moving. The next one is going to be nutrition, because this is what we're here to usually talk about. The really interesting thing is that methylation it relies really heavily on micronutrients. So like the vitamins and minerals that we get from the quality of the foods that we eat. And it relies heavily on things called B vitamins, which I'm sure you all know of right now as of now. They support cellular methylation and cellular energy. And especially one specific B B vitamin B9 called folate, and then B12 and B6, which are common B vitamins as well. Methylation also relies really heavily on nutrients like choline, magnesium, which we recommend for most people, zinc, and then betaine as well. However, diets low in our quality nutrients like our leafy greens, our cruciferous vegetables, our liver support foods, our really high quality things like animal protein with all of our essential amino acids, all of those high quality whole foods can quickly, if we're not eating those, it can quickly drain all of those cofactors so that methylation doesn't even just like have the ingredients that it needs in order to do the things that it needs to do. And then also, of course, if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum where maybe you could be eating some of the whole foods, but you're also drinking a lot of alcohol or doing more than 1 or 2 drinks a week, or you're also mixing in a lot of those ultra processed foods that can drive inflammatory factors, that can also really quickly drain those cofactors that your body needs. And remember, as Steph said, the older we get and the more we go through perimenopause and menopause, the more our body actually needs in terms of nutrients because it gets less and less efficient at using the ones that we have been eating before, right? So we need to make sure that we are getting in those extra nutrients to support just that lack of efficiency that our body now has in using those nutrients. And then just a quick note on nutrition as well, gut health really matters here because you obviously need proper digestion and absorption to actually use the nutrients that you're getting from your food. So making sure that you do have, your digestive health is a priority is a big thing just from a nutrient perspective.
Then we have the environment. So things like toxins, heavy metals, even mold can all burden your liver, which use up methylation resources that would otherwise go towards hormone and neurotransmitter balance to help you with fat loss. And so now we're starting to prioritize things in our body. So this is where, exposure to things matters. And you got to reduce exposure to those things. So the BPAs, the plastics containers, trying to switch to stainless steel or glass if you can, switching from Teflon pans to stainless steel, like little things like that will add up in the long run to support you. And then also, of course, stress and inflammation, my favorite topic. So chronic stress, poor sleep, over-exercising, inflammation, they increase your demand for methylation. When cortisol and inflammation rise, your body uses up those methyl groups so fast and actually super deplete you of magnesium, like really freaking quick. And so now you're also missing the cofactor for methylation, which is magnesium. And so your ability to clear hormones or detox slow down, which will increase inflammation even more, which we know cortisol and inflammation block your fat burning. And so if you're someone who's struggling with methylation already, this is something that's really, really going to make things challenging for you. This is why when we're doing like specific meal planning with our clients, when we put them through like this protocol that we have, it's designed to give you all of these nutrients, all of the cofactors that you need to help support detox, to lower inflammation, to allow your body to get better at this, get better at breaking things down, get better at taking food and turning it into fuel, supporting your mitochondria. And it's crazy how much better people will feel, but it's, we're in this world where we are nowhere near eating that way, right? And so it's understand there's a cumulative factor here, and stress is going to be one of those things that we have to work on. Like we have to actively slowing down, actively bringing our heart rate and breathing rate down. These are things that people won't take the time to do for 2 to 5 minutes, but they're worried about all these supplementations. It doesn't matter because your body's going to burn through those anyways. And so it's understanding what's actually worth it to spend time and money on. And so how does methylation affect women's health specifically? For women, inefficient methylation shows up in incredibly specific ways. One is obviously difficulty losing fat despite doing everything right. Fatigue, anxiety, low motivation, because now we have low neurotransmitter production. For some women, this shows up as ADHD, mental health issues like anxiety and depression. It can result in sensitivity to caffeine and alcohol that you never had before. Hormonally, we see a lot of PMS, heavy periods, estrogen dominant symptoms, and that's like premenopause, like, bloating, the mood swings, the breast tenderness, and as well as when we're going through perimenopause, menopause, we see that women who have poor methylation have a very difficult transition through menopause. Very. And a lot of the time it's because, we're highly stressed, we're highly inflamed, not getting the right nutrients, we're not sleeping, and we're getting by because our hormones are kind of like buffering it. And as soon as those hormones start to decline, it hits you like a truck because like your body doesn't slow down as slow as most people. It slows down really fast. This is where we see like a lot of weight gain, a lot of those symptoms, the sudden anxiety, you can't sleep, you can't focus, breast tenderness, you're super irritable, you don't feel like yourself again, and it feels like a bit of a hole, right? Like that you're trying to dig yourself out of, but you don't realize it's something that was already happening under the surface, and like your hormones were just kind of buffering it for you. And so once those hormones decline, it's like that Mack truck moment where it's like you feel like you got hit, and then put it in reverse and hit you again and then hit you on the way out. Like it's drastic for some people.
Another thing that we see a lot of too is autoimmune conditions. So women who don't methylate very well are actually far more likely to develop autoimmune diseases and disorders like things like Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis. Remember, a lot of those autoimmune condition development, the likelihood actually goes up pretty exponentially as we go through perimenopause and menopause, just like Steph was mentioning, because our stress threshold now goes down so much. And then we already have these baseline methylation issues, right? Poor sleep quality and quantity. You're waking up a bunch. You're not able to sleep properly. You feel like every night you're not getting good sleep. That can actually be a methylation issue as well. Poor stress tolerance or a tendency towards actual burnout. So we have bodies that might be really, really sensitive to stress and even more sensitive than some other normal people. And maybe your body shuts down really easily, or you feel exhausted like right away after you have like a stressful event, as opposed to your body being able to kind of deal with it properly, or feeling a little bit more wired sometimes. And then just in general, a more sensitive body. So maybe you wake up feeling inflamed a lot for no reason that you can detect, or you feel like you take a medication and your body just reacts so crazily to it. And you're like, this was the lowest dose. Like, I don't understand how my body even registered it was there, right? So all of those things can be influenced by methylation because of the way that our methylation can process those compounds, just like caffeine and alcohol that Steph had mentioned, as well as gets rid of them in the body, right?
This is so funny because I feel like you're speaking to me, like, so
I was
clearly.
thinking of you and I was like, oh, stress threshold.
I'm like, oh my gosh. Like it does. It takes me a long time to wind down after events. My aura ring is like so high after like speaking. Like I went and spoke at a university and my aura ring was like, you had a super stressful day. I'm like, I thought today was great. And then I got home and it was like, you can ask Taylor, I was like in the couch. I was like, I like can't even function. And then like I take children's Advil if I have a headache.
Yeah.
Like, because it works so effectively. People used to laugh at me saying I was such a like cheap drunk. Like I could literally have maybe 2 drinks because it was like, I was like, oh, wow, I'm losing my inhibition here. I'm like losing my filter more than I already don't have. Like it's so funny. And the more that you learn, it's like, oh, that explains me at 18. Oh, that explains this. Oh, that explains that.
Yeah, it answers a lot of questions, I think, for a lot of people, right? Now, methylation, also to mention, plays a major role in how your liver actually even clears things like estrogen or testosterone or progesterone. So if that process slows down, then and Steph, you talk a lot about estrogen dominance in perimenopause, and that estrogen will recirculate and then throw off your hormone balance. So it can create this really vicious cycle just because our body's not actually able to break it down and clear it properly, right? And so this is one of the reasons that makes methylation one of those really under-discussed factors in women's hormone health and metabolic health specifically, because it affects women so much more than it actually affects men.
Yeah. And then like one other observation we have made was like, why does methylation affect women so much more than it affects men? Like, why don't we see men have the same issues or genetic problems involving methylation as women? Just like women are 8 times more likely to develop hypothyroidism than men. Like, come on. Like, we're already birthing babies and carrying them. Like, we already have a lot of stuff going on. So the first one is hormonal fluctuations, increased demand on methylation. So methylation is one of our body's main ways, like we mentioned, to detoxify estrogen and other hormones in our body. And every month, as estrogen rises and falls, especially during perimenopause and menopause when it can be way more erratic and hormone levels are shifting unpredictably, your liver relies on methylation to process and clear those hormones. And so the more estrogen that your body is producing or struggles to clear, the more methylation support that you need. If methylation is sluggish, estrogen ends up recycling, leading to those symptoms that we see, the PMS, the bloating. Women in perimenopause who are like, why is my weight going up all of a sudden? Like I was losing weight, and now I'm bloated all the time. This happened to one of my clients. And then boom, she got her period after not having her period for, 8 months. And it's like, oh, here we go, right? And in perimenopause, progesterone drops first before estrogen. So we're already in like a fairly estrogen dominant state. Our body is trying to detoxify to match estrogen progesterone balance. And so this cycle is like, it requires a lot of nutrients in our body, but we're all like, oh no, the scale went up. I'm going to drop my calories and drop my carbs. And boom, there goes half of the nutrients that you need to support methylation to actually bring the bloating down. And so in contrast to men, they have so much more stable hormone levels. There's less estrogen turnover. The methylation systems just aren't quite under the same consistent pressure. So this is why they can cut calories and lose 10 pounds and you cut calories and gain 5. This is why they can fast and they feel amazing and energized and you feel horrid, right? Like this is why they can do more extreme stuff than us, because our body is also doing so much more internally than theirs. And so our stress tolerance is lower because we have all these other processes in our body that we're trying to deal with that unfortunately men don't have to deal with, which this is why we're not the same. This is why we can't do things the same. Like and Taylor can literally fast all day if he wants to and eat and he's fine. And I'm like, I can't. That would destroy my body. And I also would not be able to function.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just from a hormonal cycle perspective, just if anyone's listening and you don't know this, just remember that men have 24-hour hormone turnover, whereas women have, in premenopause, when we're actually cycling properly, we have 28-day hormone turnover. So men's are a lot shorter and a lot more stable. Women's are obviously throughout the entire month, things are fluctuating, right? And then when we hit perimenopause and even menopause, when we're on HRT and things, those cycles change drastically in terms of the number of days they end up lasting, right? So our hormone cycles are so much less efficient in some ways than men's, and of course they fluctuate so wildly.
By a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, it's because biologically females have to have the children, they have to bear the children and grow the babies and things like that, which means unfortunately, just from a biological perspective, our bodies they're designed to be more sensitive to our environment on purpose, right? Doesn't serve us well sometimes nowadays, but this is how they're designed, and it's actually a really, beautiful gift that we have to appreciate. Now, when it comes to nutrient needs, women have higher nutrient needs too, just like Steph, you were mentioning, but we also are more likely to be deficient in them. So women are actually more likely to become deficient in these key methylation nutrients than men. Things like folate, B12, B6, our choline, our magnesium, our zinc that we had mentioned earlier. We are so much more likely to actually have the depletion levels of these nutrients very low. This is sometimes due to when we're in reproductive years, we have blood loss, and which that depletes a lot of B vitamins and minerals. When we go through things like pregnancy, breastfeeding, and even using like birth control, or even things like some types of HRT, like synthetic HRTs, this will all increase B vitamin demand and make you more deficient in B vitamins. And then, of course, our very friendly dieting and chronic calorie restriction. Who me? No, that's not me. But that can lower overall nutrient intake, right? So even if you haven't had kids and you haven't been through a pregnancy and breastfeeding and the postpartum phase that lasts up to 2 years, you can still have these methylation issues from like a nutrient perspective, even just by chronically dieting or chronically trying to restrict yourself of the nutrients that you need. And these can all really directly reduce methylation efficiency.
Remind me after this podcast to go take my supplements, because I totally forgot. I'm like, I didn't take my B today.
Steph's not methylating today, you guys.
Okay, next one is stress load and cortisol metabolism. So unfortunately, women often carry a higher allostatic load, which means more chronic stress from multitasking, which Taylor told me I suck at yesterday. He's like, you can't talk and do this or this at the same time. And I'm like, what? He's like, I told you, I'm like, dang it, it's true. We have more chronic stress from multitasking, from emotional labor, hormonal sensitivity to stress. We are carrying so much now compared to like parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. People can get a hold of us at any time of day through our cell phones. We can always be working if we want to be working. We are being the taxi mom. We are being a wife. We are being a mom. We are being a daughter. We are taking care of sick parents. We are saying yes to everything while also expecting to have all the time in the day to enjoy workouts and to eat healthy and to meal prep. And, it's just, we have a lot on our plates, way more than we used to. And hormonally, what our body can handle is not that. And we get pissed off, especially in perimenopause and menopause, because we can't handle what we used to. And it's because this bucket of stress capacity that we have shrinks when our hormones decline. And so now what used to be quote unquote fine, which let's be honest, you probably weren't fine, but now it's like 1000% not fine. Like this bucket of what you can actually tolerate is overflowing. And we know that when this happens and cortisol goes up, it uses methylation for clearance. Our body needs that to try and get rid of those stress hormones so that it's not damaging everything else in our body. Because if it stays elevated, that's what happens. We see deterioration in the body, more chronic inflammation, more oxidative stress. Things break down. That's how disease happens. There's a reason that women are experiencing so much more chronic disease now than ever before. It's because of this. Chronic stress is going to steal those methyl groups that we need for other functions like detoxification, neurotransmitters, so you feel happy, so you feel motivated, so you feel energized, for DNA repair, which is very important for things like cancer prevention, right? And over time, that means the stress alone can completely deplete your body's methylation, the capacity it has for it, especially if nutrition and recovery aren't prioritized. And so for myself, I know if I want to go push myself in the gym an extra day a week, add an extra hour of workouts, that requires an extra hour of intentional recovery for me, because this is a problem for me. I'm very sensitive. My stress tolerance is low. I can get burnt out very easily. For me, this is why I cannot go into a deficit personally lower than 1,600 calories. I cannot be in any kind of deficit for longer than 6 to 7 weeks because of my ability, my capacity is so low compared to what it used to be because of the years of stress and the way your life changes as you have a growing family and demands in your career and relationships and moving and all of these things that are good, but also they're a stress, right? And so it's understanding that being in a deficit too long is going to deplete you of the nutrients that you need in order for your body to function properly. Like for me, I'll start gaining weight at that 1,600 calorie rate if I'm there for more than 6 weeks. Like it just is, my body does not handle that stress. And is that frustrating? Yes, but I've learned I'm able to get changes with less of the working and just a little bit more recovering, which is amazing. But a lot of us are so used to go, grind, push. I have to like sacrifice and struggle in order to like get the prize. That's not how life is necessarily supposed to be, right? A lot of us are in the peak of our careers or working hard and grinding has served us. That doesn't necessarily equate to health. And so you have to understand and separate, what might work for a career or whatever it is that you're comparing it to for the grind and hustle probably isn't serving you for your body. Because for me, it definitely is not. And so it's understanding, where is your body? How do you take care of it appropriately? And so this is why I always talk about this stuff, because there are more women like me than not. Like we see it in our coaching program every single day.
Yeah. And even just thinking about like the stress that we have to put our bodies under just to live life these days, that's immediately going to influence everyone's methylation right away, right?
100%.
And just to touch quickly on like the genetic factors again, we're going to talk about MTHFR like very soon here, because I know a lot of women we talk to know that they have this actual polymorphism, but this MTHFR or even like our COMT enzyme issues, which we might talk about in another podcast episode, I think, Steph. both men and women, they both have methylation-related gene variants, but women are actually more likely to feel the effects because these genes so directly affect the hormones that affect us, like estrogen and our catecholamine metabolization. So your catecholamines are your fight or flight hormones, which when we're under more stress as women and our bodies can't handle stress as well, that is going to have a huge effect, right? And so these can fluctuate much more dramatically in women than they typically do in men. And even this COMT enzyme, for instance, can help clear both estrogen and those stress neurotransmitters like dopamine and like that norepinephrine and serotonin and things like that. So when this COMT or this MTHFR is slow, then women just experience more things like anxiety, more irritability, estrogen dominance, all of those which tie back to the methylation piece as well.
And then, of course, environmental and hormonal toxin exposure, because women are exposed to more endocrine disruptors. And this is because we use a lot of beauty care and skincare and the cleaning products, and these compounds can mimic estrogen, can create heavier detox load on our methylation pathways. And so then our liver has a lot more to process, the more methylation cofactors that we need, right? We need more B vitamins, we need more choline, all of those things. And so like for myself, this is something that, like I mentioned, we've been slowly transitioning. So, when we've used up our Windex, for example, now we're buying a cleaner version that has less toxins in it. Our laundry detergent, we've slowly been swapping that out as we're finishing up loads of the kind that we have. Makeup and my skincare, that's been like a huge one for me, which I've noticed a massive difference. The way that we cook, right? All of those things, the way that we store food. There are so many things that accumulate. And so you're just lowering exposure where possible is really helpful, and do it slowly over time because, cleaner products are unfortunately definitely more costly. But to me, my health is like worth it. And so that's something that I'm willing to sacrifice, a couple Starbucks a week to do, or whatever it might be, right? So now that we've talked about what poor methylation is, how it can present in your body, let's circle back to the genetic component for a second and talk about some of the actual genes that might be contributing to the function of the methylation in your body. Because again, like you mentioned, MTHFR is a hot topic, and a lot of women know that this is the problem for them.
Yeah, so we're only going to talk about MTHFR today. We're not going to talk about any of the other ones because this is just the main issue that we see. So MTHFR gene, as we said, is responsible for doing something that we feel might be really simple, converting folate from our food or supplements into its active form called methylfolate. And if you have a variation in this gene, there are two main polymorphisms that we'll quickly talk about. Your body actually might convert folate less efficiently, which can reduce your methylation capacity. So this MTHFR gene is so important for just like the speed and rate and the efficiency at which your body can methylate things. So the two main polymorphisms that we see, these are called SNPs in the MTHFR gene that can influence our methylation activity. The first one is C677T. I don't expect you to remember this unless you've already had your genes tested and you're like, yep, that's the one, I recognize that. This is the more impactful one. People with so you have 2 copies of every gene, right? So people with 1 copy have about 70% of their normal enzyme activity, which means they've lost 30% of their methylation power. But people with 2 copies of this gene, of this polymorphism, or the mutated gene, this is called your homozygous because you have 2 of the same bad copies, can have only 30 to 40% of normal activity, which means you have lost 60 to 70% of your normal methylation capacity. And this variant is also associated with increased homocysteine levels, which indicates slower methylation, potential cardiovascular risk, and autoimmune issues we typically see with this one because your homocysteine directly is affected by your immune system, and your immune system is what causes autoimmune conditions. The next one is A1298C. This is the second most popular one that we look at when it comes to any kind of effect in the body. This is the one that I have. This one affects enzyme regulation a little bit differently, and it's actually a little bit more related to our our neurotransmitter metabolism and then energy, and not as much to our immune system or homocysteine levels. So alone, it does tend to have a little bit more mild effects. When we combine it with that other gene variant, that 677T that we talked about, the impact can be more pronounced, and we do sometimes see people with both of these copies. If you alone have this A1298C copy, that doesn't mean that you are out of the woods. It can still affect your rates of methylation by up to 40 to 60% as well. It just isn't as associated with the immune response that we see with the other polymorphism, which obviously for some people can be a little bit more helpful. Still affects methylation pretty significantly though.
So how much do MTHFR variants actually affect our body? When MTHFR specifically is reduced, it doesn't necessarily cause disease, okay? But it can reduce your methylation capacity, leading to this cascade of subtle but very meaningful effects across your body systems. And so let's look at hormones and hormone metabolism and detoxification first, because like we mentioned, methylation is essential for estrogen detoxification in the liver's phase 2 pathway. When our MTHFR is sluggish, estrogen and its metabolites can start to accumulate, leading to that estrogen dominance, PMS, fibroids, or even unfortunately increased breast cancer risk over time. Then we have neurotransmitter balance and mood. Methylation supports production and breakdown of neurotransmitters like your dopamine, your serotonin, and your norepinephrine. And with poor methylation, women can start to experience anxiety, low mood, brain fog, or irritability. It also affects the balance between dopamine and epinephrine, where too little methylation can lead to overstimulation and poor stress resilience. And so this is where understanding nutrition can actually help with this so much. Of course, obviously, if we're in extreme cases, doctor's probably going to put you on some medications and stuff, but this is where we highly underestimate the power of nutrition with our ability to, actually mitigate these symptoms that we're seeing and actually getting to the root cause and supporting your systems better, as opposed to just necessarily putting a Band-Aid on it. And that's not saying that you shouldn't take medications. It can be vastly helpful for a lot of people. However, what's the root cause? Because there's usually something else going on. And we see this all the time when women are like, oh my gosh, my mood is so much better. I'm way less anxious. I found my joy for life again. There was a woman in our program who's like, I'm always just meh. My baseline is just meh. I don't get excited about things. I don't get necessarily overworked. I'm just meh, really. And so then after working with us, she's like, oh my gosh, I actually get excited for things. I'm having fun again. She's like, I didn't realize how poorly I felt before because that was just my baseline for so long. And through nutrition and lifestyle, we were able to really adjust things. And so that's just to say, digging deeper can be really beneficial sometimes for people and completely change your quality of life.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us, think it's an us problem, when really we have to remember this is probably a chemical problem too. It's not just your fault that you're not feeling very good about things or that you have no motivation, right? Now, does that mean that the work is different in terms of getting yourself out of that rut? No, but just having the awareness and the understanding and knowing that this is not necessarily a you problem. This is an internal problem where we're not producing the right hormones to actually help us feel better, right? And so that's where that MTHFR polymorphism can actually really greatly affect people's energy, their fatigue levels, and then their mitochondrial function, because this methylation is really needed to synthesize things like CoQ10 and nutrients that are critical for energy production in our body, which means baseline metabolism. And so if we have an MTHFR gene polymorphism that's reducing our availability to actually do that by 60 to 70%, that's huge. And this low methylation can also show up as these things like chronic fatigue, sluggish metabolism, difficulty recovering from exercise is a big one too. So those are some big things that we tend to see with people who have the MTHFR SNPs or polymorphisms, that, it greatly affects the way that their body just baseline functions. And it's not a you problem. It is your genes at the end of the day. And another thing that our MTHFR can influence is actually cardiovascular and like our inflammation systems. So inefficient MTHFR activity can actually, as we said, elevate that homocysteine, which is a byproduct of methylation that can irritate our blood vessels. It causes inflammation. It promotes that, your hormones are not going to be recycled properly. And that's where we get a lot of the autoimmune conditions too, because it just overall increases inflammation in the body. And it's also been linked to cardiovascular risk. So it's, they're not necessarily unmodifiable. Everything is fixable, but we have to remember that when we have these gene polymorphisms, it just makes it harder, and you have to unfortunately work harder by no choice or option of your own in order to have the same baseline as somebody who doesn't have these genetic problems.
But harder could mean more recovery, right? Like that's how it is for me. Like I have to work harder at actually scheduling rest. It doesn't mean you have to grind more. It might actually mean the opposite. But for us in our brains, rest feels unproductive. And so there is this like switch in like, I have to work harder to recover versus I have to work harder in the gym, right? And so this is where really understanding your body allows you to have more grace and compassion for it and start working with it instead of against it. And for a lot of women, we have to learn this the hard way, myself included. And it's tough sometimes, right? Then we have our liver and detox pathways where we have reduced methylation capacity. It limits your liver's ability to neutralize toxins and hormones, which is going to drive up inflammation, can result in chemical sensitivities. Do you ever get into an Uber and have like an assault and have a massive headache? Okay, this is part of that, right? We can have sluggish detox, headaches, skin breakouts when we're exposed to certain foods or environmental triggers. It also affects reproductive health and fertility. MTHFR polymorphisms have unfortunately been associated with infertility, recurrent pregnancy loss, and complications like preeclampsia, partly because folate is crucial for DNA synthesis and cell division during early pregnancy. So here's the key. Having an MTHFR variant doesn't mean that your health is destiny, that it's your health destiny is fixed, right? It doesn't mean that you are screwed. It just means that you might need more specific nutrients, less of the wrong stressors. You might not get to be as aggressive in a fat loss phase. It doesn't mean that you won't get to where you want to be and see the changes that you want. It's just the journey to get there looks very different than other people. And the biggest thing to remember is that genetics may load the gun, but environment's what's going to, turn it on or off, right? What's going to pull that trigger and cause this cascade. And so we actually have a lot more control than we think. A lot of us just like, oh, that's what I am. That's who I am. That's my diagnosis. And therefore, that's why I feel like this. And we almost use it as a crutch sometimes. And that can be tough to hear because I know it can be tough. I mean, I'm there. I know. I go through these things too, right? And so that can be tough to hear. But having the information allows you to make better choices to be able to get to where you want to be. Like, despite all of this stuff, I'm still able to maintain like 22 to 24% body fat and not have to push as hard on the stressor side. I need to put more time on the recovery and getting adequate nutrition side. And so it's just understanding what that hard actually is for you, where most of your time needs to go, where most of your time and effort needs to go, because it's going to be vastly different from person to person. And so it's not that you're lazy, like you actually need to schedule the downtime. And we're just not used to it because we've seen hard work only be modeled one way. Recovery is hard work. Like taking time for you and self-care and slowing down is hard work, but we're just not used to seeing that anywhere. So this is your permission to, actually take care of you the way your body needs you to take care of you.
And like, let's face it, the older we get, we go through these hormonal changes. It's going to be hard no matter what. And so we have to start working smarter in terms of what are we actually putting our hard into. And Steph, we actually just had a really, really good call with our client group about trade-offs and about how, there are choices in life that we have to make and choices in life that we get to make. And regardless of whatever pushed us into making a specific choice or going a certain direction, there will always be a trade-off to whatever choice has been made, either made for you or a choice that you make. And, for example, if you get dealt these cards of having an MTHFR variant that's going to slow down your methylation, that's a choice that you have had to make. You've been given. Those are the cards you've been dealt. And, this just means that, like it or not, you'll probably have to work harder in those smarter areas and do more things intentionally in your everyday life in order to support your health and your body better than someone who doesn't have this variant. And unfortunately, that's just something that we have to be okay with and we have to accept, and we're just going to have to work smarter and harder in that certain direction. Now, we can do a lot of things, and Steph, you're going to talk about this, is, we can support our methylation very naturally, regardless if you know your genes or not, or regardless if you think you have this MTHFR polymorphism. So let's start with that, Steph. What can we do to actually support this now from a lifestyle and a nutrition perspective?
So there's a few things that can really make a difference here. The first one is eating a methylation-rich diet. This is your leafy greens, your spinach, your kale, your romaine, the things that you don't want to eat. Let's be honest. Beets, broccoli, asparagus, avocado. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to eat beets, but I will eat broccoli all day. Eggs, especially the yolks. Very good. Everyone's like, oh, cholesterol. Guess what? I recorded a podcast, episode 240 on cholesterol, where you can find out that cholesterol, eating it dietarily, doesn't actually increase your levels. So there is so many things that you can do for your cholesterol if that's something you're concerned about. Making sure that you are, having legumes and seeds. You can have liver. I'm honestly not going to have that, so I'm going to pass on that one. But grass-fed meats. We want to make sure that we're including those B12-rich foods like salmon and eggs, the grass-fed meats. If you're going to supplement. I take supplement, right? I take B vitamins every day. They also help you with energy, and other hormone production processes. So I recommend most women take a B vitamin in the morning every day anyways. Getting enough choline, again, from eggs, liver, lean meats. So you can see a trend here where eggs and meat is actually very good for you, for your methylation. And then getting your betaine from beets and spinach, supporting your liver with those cruciferous veggies. Hydration, getting adequate fiber in your diet from actual fruits and vegetables and greens, not protein bars and keto wraps and whatever. Those are fake fibers that can actually cause more inflammation, especially if you're someone who struggles to break things down. It can actually make things worse. I am one of those people. Taking out unnecessary medications, reducing or removing alcohol, all of those things help support methylation and hormone clearance. That might sound like a list that you've probably heard if you've been here before. There is a reason for that.
A lot of the things that you do to improve your health overall are going to baseline improve your methylation abilities, which is why it improves your health, right? One thing that we really want to work hard on that I think we've talked about a lot, Steph, but it's always good to reiterate, is reducing our stress load on the body. So we can do this quite a few different ways because there are so many different forms of stress on the body that form layers, right? The first one would be nutritionally. And we talk about this a lot. You need to eat consistently because eating enough protein, eating enough carbs, eating enough fats, and eating in the right ratios with the right amount of energy for your body while still, eating that high quality food in the levels that we need to and avoiding the ultra processed foods all of the time that might drive inflammatory responses. Again, everything in moderation. We need a little bit of a balance here, but this is going to create safety and reduce that layer of stress of the unpredictability of what your body is getting from a nutrient perspective. Remember, we talked so much today about nutrients being that key factor in how our body methylates and therefore how our body functions. So we need to make sure that we are giving our body the right nutrients that it needs in the right amounts in order to actually function properly. Now, another thing we can do to reduce stress is prioritizing rest. Like Steph said, that's a form of working harder for a lot of us, is making sure we stay disciplined with rest days and prioritizing recovery. Going to bed and prioritizing our sleep and being selfish in those little microcosms throughout the day to take care of our body. Sleep is when your body actually performs methylation. Sleep is when your body, sleep and recovery is when your body detoxifies things. So we need to make sure Yeah, we need to make sure that we're supporting those processes by giving it time after we do the work to do the extra work by resting and recovering. That's also where we lose fat and build muscle after we've done the work, right? Chronic stress, overtraining, even undertraining, because that creates stress too, will deplete those methyl donors because, again, those are layers of stress that we can control. And if you are supplementing, like Steph mentioned, make sure that if you think that you have any kind of methylation issues from a genetic perspective, I always recommend that we just, to play it safe, get a what we call methylated form of B vitamins. Of course, sometimes overmethylation can happen too, so we don't want to, more is not always better. Make sure you guys are doing everything in moderation. But methylated B vitamins can be very helpful for most people.
And then, like I mentioned, reducing toxin exposure, choosing cleaner beauty and skincare products, cleaning products, use glass instead of plastic. Consider like a high quality air filter if you need, or a water filter, right? Everyone's losing their mind over lead right now. There's more lead in water most of the time and on your fruits and veggies than in your protein powders. So like, that's just something to be aware of. This is why I want to clean stuff up. This is why we want to, filter things, reduce exposure where possible.
Yeah.
And then also, one that people don't realize is mind your mindset, your psychological and physical stress. So chronic stress keeps methylation resources diverted to that stress hormone production. So this is where doing the things like breath work, walking, taking 5 minutes of deep breathing daily, putting your feet up on the wall to bring your heart rate, your breathing rate down, those things all help massively. This is for me where like spending time in prayer and things like that have been very helpful for me, where I find I worry significantly less because I'm just like, God has a plan. We're going to be okay. I'll do what I can. But like, it's been nice to kind of have things are in someone else's control. My anxiety, my worry has improved so much. And we don't realize how much that actually contributes to depleting our methylation resources as well. And so methylation is one of these processes that kind of quietly determines how well your body is going to function, how you burn fat, the balance of your hormones, how you manage stress, what you can tolerate, and even how you age, how quickly that process goes through. You see people who are 80 and you wouldn't think they're 80, and you see people who are 80 and you're like, I thought you were 100, right? And here's the beautiful thing is you can influence it every single day through the choices you make through food, through recovery, through stress management. Supporting methylation isn't about chasing the latest supplement. So if all you do from this is take supplements, I'm going to be a little bit upset. I'm going to be honest, you are missing things big time. It's not about the crazy biohacks. It's about creating that internal environment and making the choices where your body's chemistry can actually do what it's supposed to do properly. And a lot of us are like, oh, it must be the sauna. Oh, it must be this. Oh, it must be that. And it's like, no. Nutrients and foods and stress management are like the biggest rocks. And so if you're not taking the time to do 5 minutes of slowing down and breathing, but are doing all this extra stuff, you are completely missing it. You are stepping over $100 bill to pick up a penny. And so the biggest thing that you need to do is probably the thing that you're like, oh, I don't have time for that. That's probably what you need to be doing, which is the rest and recovery, to be completely honest, and getting the nutrients in that you need. And so I hope this was helpful. I hope there are things that you can take from this and that you've learned to understand this more. We are going to do another podcast on some of the other variations that there is, talk about the one that I have specifically as well, which will be great. But this will be kind of we're going to do a couple topics similar to this. I'll do one on genetics again in the future here too, just to kind of compile all this. But again, the biggest thing is if you think you have this, the big rocks first, the rest, the nutrition, all those things, okay? Because I always get comments out of things like this. Which supplement do you recommend? That's not the point. You're missing the point. And then, of course, we recommend getting tested too. If you can genetically, that's awesome. This is why we do DESH testing with all of our clients, because we can actually see pretty well how well is your body at breaking things down. Because that's going to tell us so much and influence your journey. And also see like how much is stress actually impacting this? Because for most women, when they get that back, they're like, wow, I didn't think it was that bad. we're like, we did. But at least now we have proof to show you. And it makes it easier to like, stick with things because you see it. You can actually see it, which is great. And then you can start identifying the things that kind of go with that. Carrie, is there any closing remarks that you want to hop on here before we close off?
I think if anyone is wondering where they can get some testing done, I think the first thing that I would probably the first direction I would point them in is there are some online platforms that will do it for you. So for example, that 23andMe or even the Ancestry, if you're doing your genetic information, they will be able to give you what they call your raw DNA data, like your genome. And then you can take it to your healthcare practitioner, or if you wanted to, you could run it through like an online program with your raw data to actually get some information if you are interested in knowing, hey, do I have an MTHFR issue? I maybe suspect. Again, at the same time, the only thing it's going to give you is certainty. It doesn't mean that you're going to change anything that you should be doing at this point, in my opinion. And again, as Steph said, the Dutch test can be really helpful for us to even just look at how our body is detoxifying things. Now, that doesn't give us answers from what genes you have, but it does give us answers in terms of like how your body is functioning with the environment that it's in, which can be even more powerful and, in my opinion, even more helpful than just knowing what our genes are. Because, okay, well, how is your body actually functioning with the genes that you have, right? Because that's the most important thing, is what are we going to do about it?
Yeah. How is your body functioning and how can we make it function better?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just getting a lot of answers, which is nice.
Yeah.
So if you guys have any questions, please reach out. We love you so much. We do offer those free consult calls if you do want to figure out what your calories should be, where your nutrition should be at. Are you recovering enough? What should your workouts kind of look like? This is what we do on those calls. They're completely free. So if you want that, you can book it in the show notes. We love you so much. We will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.